June 6, 1944, 6:30 a.m. Utah Beach, Normandy, France. The ramp of the landing craft slammed down into the cold, gray water of the English Channel, and war spilled out with it. Bullets snapped across the surf. Mortar rounds detonated in the sand. The air was filled with smoke, salt, and the metallic scream of incoming fire. Young American soldiers stumbled forward under the crushing weight of their gear, some falling before they had taken more than a few steps. And walking among them, upright and exposed, was a man who should not have been there at all. Brigadier General Theodore Roosevelt Jr. was 56 years old. He suffered from severe arthritis. He walked with a cane. His heart was weak. Army doctors had warned him clearly. Landing with the first wave could kill him. High Command had agreed. He was supposed to observe the invasion from a ship offshore. Instead, he insisted on coming ashore with his men. This was not stubbornness, it was conviction. Roosevelt believed leadership was not something exercised from a distance. Orders mattered only if the men receiving them believed in the man giving them, and belief, he knew, was forged under fire. As German machine guns raked the beach, Roosevelt stepped forward calmly, his cane sinking into wet sand with each step. He did not crouch, he did not run, he did not seek cover. He moved as if the chaos around him were temporary noise, something to be understood rather than feared. Around him, the landing was already unraveling. The assault force had drifted south in the darkness. Smoke, wind, and current had pushed the landing craft nearly 2 kilometers away from their intended sector. Units were mixed, officers were missing, radios were dead. Men trained for months to recognize specific landmarks now saw nothing that matched their maps. Confusion spread quickly. This was not where they were supposed to be. For an army built on planning, this kind of mistake could have been fatal. Then the soldiers noticed who was standing beside them. Roosevelt unfolded his map under fire. He studied the beach exits. He looked inland. He watched where German fire was coming from. He asked short questions, listened carefully, and made calculations, not with numbers, but with experience. Someone finally said what everyone was thinking. They were in the wrong place. Doctrine demanded they move north to the correct landing zone before advancing. Roosevelt looked up, glanced at the men pinned down around him, and spoke calmly. "We'll start the war from right here." In that moment, the invasion did not pause, it adapted. Day 1. Orders began flowing again. Roosevelt reorganized scattered units on the spot, ignoring original assignments and focusing on what mattered: momentum. Engineers were pushed forward to clear obstacles. Infantry followed. Officers who had lost their men were given new ones. What had been chaos began to harden into purpose. The soldiers watching him felt something shift inside themselves. This was a general who shared their danger, a man who could have stayed safely offshore but chose to stand where bullets landed. If he could walk upright through fire, then they could move forward. German resistance at Utah Beach was real, but uneven. Mines exploded without warning. Mortars dropped into advancing formations. Snipers fired from hedgerows and concrete positions. Men died, others froze. Roosevelt did not leave. He walked up and down the shoreline, cane in hand, encouraging soldiers, redirecting units, solving problems as they appeared. Several times, officers urged him to move to cover. Each time, he refused. By midday, American troops were moving inland faster than planned. casualties were far lower than expected. What had begun as a navigational error was becoming one of the most successful landings of D-Day. Far to the east at Omaha Beach, the situation was catastrophic. Units were pinned down. The sand was soaked red. Progress was measured in yards and paid for with lives. At Utah, the invasion had found its rhythm. Day 2, June 7th, 1944. The beachhead expanded. Supplies poured ashore. Tanks rolled inland. Artillery positions were established. German resistance continued, but it was fractured and increasingly disorganized. Roosevelt remained at the front. He slept little. He ate sparingly. His body, already weakened, was being pushed far beyond its limits, but mentally he was sharper than ever. He continued to move between units, offering encouragement, correcting mistakes, reinforcing confidence. The men trusted him, not because of his rank, but because he had been there from the first second, when fear was at its peak. Utah Beach was now secure. The invasion in this sector was succeeding beyond expectations. The war in Europe had turned a corner. Day 3, June 8th, 1944. The pace did not slow. More men landed. More equipment arrived. The American logistical machine was fully engaged now, transforming a hostile shoreline into a functioning port of war. Roosevelt's health deteriorated rapidly. His heart struggled under the strain. Officers begged him to rest. Again, he refused. He knew something many of them did not. Moments like this did not repeat. History did not pause for comfort. He continued working until his body could no longer keep up with his will. Within weeks, Theodore Roosevelt Jr. would die of a heart attack on French soil. He would be awarded the Medal of Honor posthumously. At his own request, he would be buried among the men who had fought beside him. But on those first 3 days, none of that was known. What the soldiers knew was simple. When the most important day of their lives arrived in smoke and fire, an old man with a cane stood beside them, unflinching, and because he did, the invasion moved forward. June 9th, 1944, Normandy, France. Utah Beach Sector. Brigadier General Theodore Roosevelt Jr., United States Army. 3 days after the landing, the beach no longer resembled the place where men had died in the surf. It had become a functioning artery of war. Landing craft arrived without pause. Cranes lifted artillery from ships. Engineers laid steel matting over sand still stained with oil and blood. Trucks rolled inland in long, unbroken lines, carrying fuel, ammunition, rations, the invisible weapons that decided wars long before rifles did. The invasion had survived its most fragile hours. Now it faced its most dangerous question. Could it move fast enough? Day 4. The Germans were not retreating in panic. They were adapting. Their artillery shifted targets from the shoreline to the roads leading inland. Shells fell where convoys slowed, where bridges narrowed movement, where a single destroyed vehicle could freeze an entire column. Roosevelt understood the threat immediately. An army that could not move would be destroyed piece by piece. He ordered traffic control points established under fire, rerouting vehicles around damage before engineers had even finished repairs. Units were told to keep rolling unless physically blocked. Stoppages were treated as emergencies, not inconveniences. This was not caution. This was urgency sharpened into doctrine. Roosevelt moved constantly, cane in hand, appearing where problems were worst. Officers watched him arrive unannounced, study the situation for seconds, and issue decisions that cut through hours of hesitation. Men noticed something else. He never raised his voice. Panic had no foothold where he stood. Day 5. By the 5th day, the hedgerows began to take their toll. Normandy's countryside was deceptive, green, peaceful, ancient, but each field was bordered by thick earth walls, reinforced by roots and stone, perfect defensive positions. German infantry used them well. Small units struck quickly, then vanished. Snipers delayed movement, mines punished haste. Every advance required patience paid for in blood. Roosevelt rejected the idea of waiting them out. He pushed reconnaissance forward relentlessly. Patrols were ordered to probe, provoke, and identify resistance, even when contact seemed light. Artillery was repositioned closer to the front than regulations preferred. The message was simple: do not give the enemy time to organize his courage. As airborne units finally linked up with ground forces, stories spread across the lines. Men spoke of nights alone, of fighting without orders, of surviving by instinct. And again, Roosevelt listened. He treated experience as intelligence. Day 6. The front began to widen. Villages were taken, roads opened, prisoners appeared, tired, underfed, uncertain. German resistance was no longer cohesive, it was reactive. Roosevelt approved forward movement of supply dumps, ammunition points, and artillery batteries earlier than planned. It was a calculated risk that placed vital assets closer to danger. But it did something else. It accelerated everything. The Americans were no longer inching forward, they were flowing. Officers later admitted they did not fully understand how much of that momentum came from a single presence, a general who refused distance, who insisted on seeing with his own eyes, who made decisions based on terrain and men rather than paper. Roosevelt's body was failing him now. His steps slowed, his breathing grew shallow. Staff officers noticed how often he paused, how long it took him to recover. Still, he refused relief. He knew this phase would not last. Wars turn on narrow windows, and this was one of them. The weight of it all. When Roosevelt finally stepped back, it was not because he chose to. It was because his heart could no longer sustain what his will demanded. He died weeks later, on French soil, far from home. He was buried where he had fought, among the men he refused to abandon. For his actions on the first day of the invasion, Theodore Roosevelt Jr. received the Medal of Honor. But the men who followed him did not remember the citation. They remembered the moment when everything had gone wrong, when the plan had failed, the beach was wrong, and the future was uncertain. And a man with every excuse to stay safe chose to move forward instead. Once the shoreline was secure, the war revealed its true face. The beach had been only the entrance. Beyond it waited a battlefield designed to slow, bleed, and exhaust any army that dared move inland. Normandy was a defender's paradise. Narrow dirt roads sunken between embankments, thick hedgerows reinforced by decades of roots and stone. Fields that looked open from a distance had turned into enclosed killing zones the moment a man stepped inside them. German forces understood this terrain perfectly. They did not need massed formations. They relied on machine guns hidden behind hedges, MG-42s positioned to fire down lanes of advance, mortars pre-registered on crossroads, and snipers placed in church towers and farmhouses. The American advance would be paid for meter by meter. The real fight begins. Infantry moved first. Riflemen armed with M1 Garands advanced cautiously, supported by bar gunners and men carrying bazookas for the inevitable armored threat. Engineers followed close behind, carrying Bangalore torpedoes, wire cutters, explosives, and shovels. Every hedge had to be treated as hostile. German squads would wait in silence, allow Americans to close the distance, then open fire at point-blank range. A single MG-42 could pin an entire platoon in seconds, its high rate of fire ripping through foliage and flesh alike. Progress was slow, brutal, exhausting, and yet it did not stop. Decisions under pressure. Behind this advance stood the consequences of decisions made on the first day. Utah Beach functioned, supplies flowed, ammunition reached the front, artillery units had shells when they needed them, tanks were fueled, repaired, and pushed forward instead of sitting idle on the sand. Sherman tanks began to appear behind the infantry, but the hedgerows limited their effectiveness. German Panzerfaust teams lurked close, waiting for side shots at close range. Adaptation became survival. American units welded steel hedgerow cutters onto tank fronts, allowing them to punch through embankments instead of climbing over them and exposing their underbellies. This was battlefield innovation in real time. The human limit. The tempo was relentless. Units fought by day, repositioned by night, and slept in fragments measured in minutes. Rain turned fields into mud. Dust clogged weapons. Men carried extra ammunition, extra grenades, extra weight, because running out meant dying. The cost mounted. Medics worked constantly, crawling under fire to reach wounded men. Evacuation routes stretched back to the beachhead that Theodore Roosevelt Jr. had insisted on holding together in its most fragile hours. Without that functioning artery, none of this movement would have been possible. The invasion would have stalled, and stalling in Normandy meant annihilation. Why Utah mattered. As fighting intensified inland, comparisons became unavoidable. Other sectors struggled to maintain flow. Bottlenecks formed, equipment piled up, units waited. At Utah, movement continued, not because resistance was lighter, but because the system worked. What began as a navigational error had become a logistical advantage. The beach exits Roosevelt chose, the rapid reorganization he ordered, the refusal to halt and realign under fire. Those decisions echoed days later, miles inland, in places where men fighting through hedgerows would never know his name, but would benefit from his judgment. The invasion became irreversible. By late June, the reality was undeniable. Germany could no longer throw the Allies back into the sea. American artillery dominated the battlefield. Air support increased as forward air controllers coordinated strikes on German strongpoints. Bombers and fighter bombers shredded supply lines and reinforcements. What had begun with men wading through surf under machine gun fire was now a full-scale continental invasion, and it had held when it was weakest. That was the moment that mattered most. The price paid. Theodore Roosevelt Jr. did not live to see this phase reach its conclusion. The strain he placed on himself during those first days never faded. His body absorbed it quietly until it could no longer compensate. He died on French soil, not in combat, but as a result of the weight he carried when failure was still possible. He was buried among the men who landed with him. No separation, no privilege, no distance. What remains? The liberation of Europe was not won in a single charge or a single speech. It was won by systems that worked under fire, by decisions made when maps were wrong, by leaders who understood that momentum, once lost, rarely returns. Utah Beach did not succeed by accident. It succeeded because at the exact moment hesitation would have been fatal, someone chose movement instead. Everything that followed, the hedgerows, the tanks, the blood, the road to Paris, flowed from that choice.
Normandy, France, June to July 1944. The Bocage country. Once the Allies pushed beyond the beaches, the illusion of momentum vanished. Normandy did not open itself to invaders. it resisted them. The land itself became the enemy. What appeared on maps as farmland revealed its true nature only under fire. The bocage, ancient hedgerows grown over centuries, were not simple fences. They were earthen fortifications reinforced by stone, roots, and dense vegetation, often taller than a standing man and thick enough to absorb artillery fragments. Each field was a compartment, each lane a funnel, each hedge a wall. For German defenders trained in positional warfare, it was ideal. For the advancing Americans, it was suffocating. German defense in depth. German units in Normandy did not rely on massed assaults or rigid lines. They relied on control. Small infantry elements occupied hidden positions behind hedgerows, camouflaged so thoroughly they were invisible until they fired. These positions were arranged to support one another, creating interlocking fields of fire that punished any frontal movement. The MG-42 dominated this environment. Its blistering rate of fire turned narrow lanes into death traps. German gunners fired in short, disciplined bursts, conserving ammunition while maintaining psychological dominance. The sound alone, fast, ripping, mechanical, froze men in place. German doctrine emphasized allowing the enemy to advance, then cutting them down. Mortar teams waited patiently, coordinates already plotted. Once American units stalled or bunched up, rounds fell with terrifying precision. The explosions were sudden, violent, and disorienting, designed not just to kill, but to paralyze command and control. This was not desperation. This was professional defense. The American problem. American infantry entered this environment trained for maneuver. Normandy denied it. Visibility collapsed. Platoons lost cohesion. Radios failed under foliage and terrain. Officers often had no idea where adjacent units were. Orders traveled by runners who risked sniper fire and shell fragments with every step. Tanks intended to provide firepower and shock struggled. Sherman tanks attempting to climb hedgerows exposed their underbellies, the thinnest armor on the vehicle. German Panzerfaust teams, often operating in pairs, waited silently until the moment was perfect. One shot, one explosion, a tank engulfed in flame. Crews had seconds to escape. Many didn't. The battlefield punished predictability. Learning through blood. Progress slowed to a crawl. Hundreds of meters gained at the cost of dozens of men. Entire companies exhausted in a single afternoon. Casualty evacuation became a constant challenge. Wounded men carried over hedges under fire, medics working until they collapsed. The Americans adapted, but adaptation was paid for in lives. Infantry squads became more aggressive and more cautious at the same time. Grenades were thrown over hedgerows before movement. Riflemen fired at shadows. Smoke grenades became essential tools, not luxuries. Engineers were pushed to the front. They blew gaps with satchel charges. They crawled forward to cut wire. They detonated mines by hand when no other option remained. Leadership shifted downward. Sergeants and lieutenants made decisions once reserved for higher command. Initiative replaced doctrine. The hedgerow cutters. One of the most critical adaptations came not from command, but from the field. Tank crews and mechanics welded salvaged steel beams onto Sherman tank fronts, forming crude prongs capable of ripping through hedgerows rather than climbing over them. The effect was immediate. Shermans began bursting through embankments unexpectedly, appearing behind German positions that had been oriented toward predictable avenues of approach. Defensive MG teams were caught firing the wrong direction. Panzerfaust teams were overrun before they could reposition. This was not technological superiority. It was improvisation under fire, and it worked.
a war of meters. The fighting became intensely personal. There were no sweeping advances, no dramatic breakthroughs, just repetition. Advance, contact, fire, casualties, reorganization, advance again. Night offered no relief. German units infiltrated American lines, probing for weakness. Flares lit the sky. Sporadic gunfire echoed through the hedgerows. Sleep came in fragments. Men learned to function while exhausted, hungry, and afraid. This was where armies were broken or hardened. Why the Germans could not hold. Despite tactical brilliance, the German defense had a fatal flaw. It was finite. Every trained squad lost could not be replaced. Ammunition shortages worsened. Fuel vanished. Allied aircraft roamed freely, attacking supply columns, headquarters, and reserves. German reinforcements arrived late, fragmented, or already depleted. The Americans, by contrast, kept coming. More men, more tanks, more artillery, more ammunition. The beachheads still functioned. Utah Beach still fed the front. Pressure never stopped. Attrition takes hold. By late June, the German line was no longer coherent, not broken, eroded. Each hedgerow cleared shortened defensive depth. Each village lost removed observation and control. Commanders fought to maintain cohesion, but the weight was too great. This was not defeat by collapse, it was defeat by exhaustion. The forging of an army. The Hedgerow War transformed the American army. Units emerged more lethal, more flexible, more ruthless in execution. Command learned hard lessons about terrain, fire coordination, and combined arms. This was where experience replaced theory, where survival rewrote doctrine. The stage is set. By early July, the conditions were clear. The German defense was stretched thin. Air superiority was absolute. Artillery was massed. Logistics flowed. All that remained was the blow that would shatter what was left. It would come from the sky. Operation Cobra was approaching, and when it did, the hedgerows would no longer protect the defenders. They would trap them.
The hedgerows had taught one lesson above all others. There was no safe way forward, only violent ones. By now, American infantry no longer advanced hoping to surprise the enemy. They advanced expecting contact, expecting fire, expecting death, and moving anyway. The breakout did not begin with speed. It began with suppression. Fire before movement. American artillery no longer fired to intimidate, it fired to erase. Batteries were massed with ruthless precision. Forward observers crawled into exposed positions, radios pressed to the dirt, adjusting fire by meters. When coordinates were locked, steel fell in walls. Hedgerows shattered. Tree roots exploded upward. German trenches collapsed inward. Then came the infantry. Not in waves, in fragments. Squads advanced one hedge at a time. One element moved while another fired. Bar gunners pinned likely positions. Riflemen aimed low, firing through brush where German soldiers hid motionless, waiting. Grenades came first. Always grenades. They were thrown blind over earthen walls, timed, deliberate, followed by sudden movement and short, controlled bursts at anything that moved. There was no shouting, no speeches, only signals, only violence. German counterfire. The Germans did not flee immediately. Veteran units responded with discipline. MG-42s opened suddenly, ripping lanes through advancing squads. Mortars followed within seconds, pre-registered and precise. Entire fire teams vanished in bursts of dirt and steel. Panzerfaust teams waited silently.
Sherman tanks that advanced without infantry support died fast. One shot to the flank, one explosion, a crew scrambling out, burning. American tank commanders adapted. They stopped charging hedgerows head-on. Instead, tanks suppressed from distance while infantry cleared paths. Smoke rounds blinded German gunners. Once a breach was made, armor surged through at close range, firing point-blank into trench lines. This was not elegance. This was necessity. Breaking the defense. The key was disruption. American units stopped trying to destroy every position. They punched holes. Once a gap opened, they widened it violently. German units found themselves attacked from the side, then from behind. MG teams set up to fire one direction were suddenly flanked and overwhelmed. Communication collapsed. German officers died early, exposed while attempting to reposition units. Orders never arrived. Reserves were committed blindly and destroyed piecemeal. At night, the fighting did not stop. Small American patrols moved aggressively, probing for weakness, launching sudden assaults on exhausted defenders. Sleep vanished. Fear accumulated. The Germans had defended brilliantly, but brilliance requires coordination, and coordination was gone. The role of armor and air. Once the line began to bend, speed arrived. Shermans rolled forward in columns, infantry riding exposed on hulls, weapons ready. Any resistance encountered was crushed immediately. HE rounds into tree lines, machine guns chewing through cover. Above them, Allied aircraft hunted relentlessly. Any movement by daylight invited attack. German vehicles burned in fields, artillery positions vanished, retreat routes became kill zones. This was pressure without pause, the kind that breaks armies. Close combat reality. The breakout was not clean. German units fought fiercely when cornered. House-to-house fighting erupted in villages. Grenades blasted through doorways. Rifles fired down stairwells. Bayonets were used when ammunition ran dry. Medics worked under fire, dragging wounded through smoke and debris. Casualties mounted, but momentum never stopped. Orders were simple. Do not halt. Do not consolidate. Do not give them time. Every pause gave the enemy breath, and breath meant resistance. When the line finally snapped. The moment came without announcement. 1 hour resistance was heavy, the next, gone. American units advanced and found empty positions, abandoned weapons, wounded left behind, equipment destroyed by retreating Germans who knew they could not carry it. The defense had not collapsed in a single blow. It had been torn apart from the inside. The hedgerows no longer sheltered defenders. They isolated them. What the soldiers knew. The men pushing forward did not think about strategy. They thought about survival. They fought because stopping meant dying. They advanced because retreat was impossible. They trusted the man beside them more than any plan. And through that relentless, grinding violence, the breakout succeeded. Not because it was elegant, but because it was brutal, adaptive, and unyielding. The road opened. Beyond the shattered fields, open terrain waited. For the first time since landing in Normandy, movement would not be measured in meters. The war had shifted. The enemy was no longer entrenched. He was running. And the men who had survived the hedgerows were now free to hunt.
The destruction. The moment the American breakout gained speed, the German army in Normandy stopped fighting a campaign and began fighting for survival. There were no longer front lines, only movement, only pressure, only pursuit. American infantry pushed forward without waiting for perfect alignment. Columns advanced through roads still burning from airstrikes. Tanks rolled past wrecked vehicles without slowing. Artillery followed close behind, already firing on positions not yet reached. The war no longer crept forward, it hunted. German units attempted organized withdrawal, but withdrawal required space, and space was gone. Every road became a choke point, every bridge a death trap, every village a potential encirclement. American commanders did not waste time eliminating resistance methodically. They bypassed it, they cut it off, then they crushed it later. German rear guards fought desperately to slow the advance. MG-42s opened fire from tree lines, ripping into advancing infantry. Mortars dropped fast and close. Panzerfaust teams waited behind corners, firing at point-blank range into passing tanks. But the Americans no longer panicked. Infantry advanced in bounding elements. One squad pinned the position, another flanked through fields and ditches. Grenades detonated inside gun pits. BARs and submachine guns finished what explosives started. There were no second chances. Positions that resisted were erased. Air power sealed the fate of the retreat. German columns moving by day were annihilated. Fighter bombers screamed in low, releasing rockets and strafing with cannons. Trucks exploded, tanks burned, horses pulling artillery collapsed under fire. Survivors scattered into fields, only to be hunted by infantry advancing behind the armor. Movement itself became suicidal, so the Germans moved at night, exhausted, hungry, disorganized. American artillery waited for darkness. Shells fell without warning. Barrages cut off escape routes. Retreating units collided with blocking forces they never knew were there. The retreat folded inward. As the encirclement tightened, the battlefield became chaos under control. American units advanced from multiple directions, converging deliberately. Villages were surrounded before being entered. Roads were sealed with machine guns and anti-tank fire. Any breakout attempt was crushed immediately. German resistance intensified where escape was impossible. Machine guns fired until barrels overheated. Ammunition was stripped from the dead. Wounded men were dragged into ditches and barns. Officers tried to restore order under fire and died doing it. American units did not rush these pockets, they suffocated them. Smoke filled trenches, grenades followed, short bursts of automatic fire ended resistance room by room. The fighting was intimate, brutal, relentless. Armor dominated the open ground. Sherman tanks advanced in close coordination with infantry, firing high explosive rounds into tree lines, hedges, and buildings suspected of hiding defenders. Coaxial machine guns swept fields continuously. Infantry followed tightly, clearing blind spots, protecting tanks from close assault. The lessons of Normandy had been learned. No tank advanced alone. No infantry moved without covering fire. No resistance was ignored. The battlefield was reduced systematically. Inside the shrinking pocket, German command ceased to function. Radios were destroyed or silent. Orders never arrived. Units merged without structure. Officers commanded strangers. Soldiers fought without knowing where the front was or if one even existed. Many units attempted surrender. Others fought until they were destroyed. American forces pressed forward regardless. There was no pause for negotiation in the middle of combat. The advance continued. The ground became littered with evidence of collapse. Abandoned artillery, destroyed vehicles, supply wagons burned where they stood. Bodies lay unburied. The smell of smoke and decay hung over everything. American soldiers moved through it with grim focus. They no longer reacted emotionally. They functioned. This was not hatred. It was necessity. By the time the pocket finally collapsed, there was no dramatic final stand, only silence where resistance had been. German forces in Normandy had not been pushed back, they had been dismantled, unit by unit, position by position, man by man. What remained fled east, without cohesion, without heavy equipment, without the ability to stop what was coming next. The American army that emerged from Normandy was transformed. It no longer questioned terrain. It no longer hesitated under fire. It no longer waited for perfect conditions. It advanced,
adapted, and destroyed resistance wherever it found it. The men who survived carried forward a brutal clarity learned in blood. Stop and you die. Move and you live. Normandy was not won in a single day. It was won through constant pressure, through violent adaptation, through refusal to slow down. It was won by soldiers who endured close combat, chaos, fear, exhaustion, and advanced anyway. And once the enemy broke, they did not let him recover. They pursued, they surrounded, they annihilated. If you want to understand how victory is forged, not in speeches, but in fields of fire and shattered ground, then this is that story. If you respect the men who fought and died here, support this channel. Leave your like, subscribe, and stay with us, because the war does not end here. It moves forward.